All right, looks like we're on. Hello, everyone. I see the room is almost completely full. That's great. How are you holding up? 2.5 days? Woo. Yeah, some good stuff. I've seen some good stuff over the 2 days, some exciting things that are coming there. My name is Peter Eckert, and I'm the Chief Creative Officer of Project 202. That's a really fancy name, but what that really just means is that I'm a designer that has the license to override other designers' opinion. So, Jeff?
And I am Jeffrey McLean. I am the Director of Design Technology, which is another fancy title. And what I'm in charge of is taking the designs that our interaction designers and our visual designers come up with and delivering something to our clients using these rich technologies.
So, over the last couple of days, Jeff and I, we've been to a lot of panels, and what was great to see for us was that there's a lot of developers and others that really are trying to embrace the design community and pull us more in and help us better understand how we can work closer together. And a lot of the tools that Microsoft is offering and will be offering moving forward will help all of us in that process. So we thought we will hold a session in which we are trying to give back some of that love and try to pull you a little bit closer to design. I was told that this is the last session of the show, and therefore I was supposed to keep it very light on methodology and more on the showing part. But I think you all deserve a little bit more of a high-level overview of like how we designers tick, how we approach challenges, and how we actually come up with those so-called rich user experiences. So I've prepared a couple of slides that is mostly on a theoretical level, and hopefully I can get through this in like 15 to 20 minutes. So I hope you will survive that boredom, and then we will jump into a couple of case studies that we did for some of our clients, and then Jeffrey actually prepared in a very short amount of time kind of an ad hoc idea we had a couple of days ago, following an application idea and trying to use the latest tools we have at hand to create one of those rich user experiences, or at least a prototype version of it.
And try to use something that we could demonstrate some of the principles that Peter's going to talk about.
All right, let's get right at it. By the way, I think I'm supposed to remind you guys that you need to fill out those cards at the end. I think you have done that now plenty of times, so please do so, because otherwise I don't know if my presentation ever will help you guys. And so, all right, so Project 202. What we do is we help technology companies to design and develop next generation rich user experiences. Most of you probably have never heard about us. That doesn't bother us. You know, we like to dabble behind the scenes and go at work and do the things that we do best, which is designing. Rich user experiences. What is that? When you Google it or live search it, there is no clear answer. Some will say it has to do with Web 2.0 applications or rich internet applications. But all of us seem to know somewhat what it means, And these next few slides I will try to shed a little bit more light on what it means from our point of view, from the design point of view. So let's start with rich. We have many clients where projects are sales and marketing driven, and if we ask them what their understanding is of the rich portion of a rich user experience, they will tell you, well, it's the rich part. Show me the money, make me some money, So there's clearly right away a conflict there. If you ask some developers, their understanding of richness might be having a couple of layers of abstraction, a really nice object model, methods, events, event handlers, stuff like that, Cool stuff, beautiful, rich. If you ask us designers, it's, again, something completely different. The reason why we believe that is because everyone outside of work or using applications in your normal life, we all experience an extraordinarily rich environment that surrounds us, you know. And that environment has phenomenal qualities, you know. We have all these marvelous senses, you know, smell, vision, touch, hearing, and that builds our own rich understanding of the world that we live in. We believe in order to create a meaningful, rich user experience also within the world of applications, you need to bring those qualities inside of those applications. Because the qualities that we know in our world, we are very familiar with, you know. Often we don't even have to think about them, you know. They come automatically, you know. So bringing those in will really help you create something more meaningful. How do you do that? So there's something that we call analog qualities. Analog qualities are a lot of things, and I can only touch on a few high level here. You know, we could talk hours about that. So let's start with the first one, tactileness. When something is tactile, you know, it has a touch to it. You know, plastic feels slippery, metal feels cold, fabric has some resistance to it. It feels a little bit more warm. Using a light switch, you know, you get a little bit of resistance when you try to switch it, and then halfway it helps you and flips over because there's a mechanical device behind it that drives that. There's a drop shadow that it casts because there's a light source that you just turned on. So there's a lot of tactileness to using everyday objects. So why wouldn't we do that also in applications? Occasionally you see that buttons have dimensional qualities to them, you know, but you also occasionally see the 2D button, you know, totally flat. How am I supposed to know that I can push this thing? You know, so there's a disconnect from the real world to the world that we are supposed to use applications in. Visual audio cues. Everyone here that has stayed in the hotel here has at least used an elevator 10 times in the last couple of days, at least. And
probably walked off the wrong direction that you're supposed to go into.
Yeah, so when you walk up to one, right, we all want to know what happens. You push a button, and the button gets a light around it, a red circle, I believe. And so it tells us, hey, I received your call, you know. I know you want me to come. So get at ease, you can relax, go daydreaming or whatever, and I'll bring it down to you. As soon as the elevator arrives, you hear this beautiful bing noise, and you get a visual indicator on the top of the elevator that tells you the elevator has just arrived and the doors are about to open. I don't know if you remember, but it used to be that elevators, I think even in Las Vegas, actually had the numbers on top of like which floor they are on. But that really started aggravating people because you saw it stopping and starting and stopping, and so it's actually not every visual cue is helpful, you know, and so there needs to be the right balance between those. But in this scenario, you know, you daydream, you get the signal, the visual audio signal, and you know, okay, now I can do something. So you walk up to the door that's illuminated, and then the next thing happens. Oh, that's the wrong one. Motion. The elevator door opens in an elegant movement. Not as elegant as in Star Trek, but elegant enough for us. It starts fast, and then it eases out at the ends when it tucks away. That's something we take for granted, and we see it every day, every time we use an elevator. And we walk in, and it means something to us. It's a quality. It tells us something. It tells a tiny story in our everyday life. So why wouldn't we bring these type of qualities into the applications as well? You know, why does a dialogue or a screen need to change abruptly? Why can't it transition elegantly? You know, those are things that lets us relate things in an application to the real world. And by doing that, you're starting to build patterns, memory patterns, that we can repeat without having to think about it. That's very important. And I'll tell you in a second why. Consistency. Probably every developer here in this room and a lot of the designers here have heard about how important it is to have consistency in the application. And sometimes you might even understand why that is. Why has that to do anything with richness? We believe it has to do with richness because the fundamental layer in our life is consistency. You would be surprised to learn how many people's life is very consistent for the most part. And then the richness layer on top is the layer that lets us experience all those really extraordinary things. If we wouldn't have consistencies, I predict we would have a lot of chaos in the world. Here, I give you an example. So I'll tell you two workflows of my, well, I should call them life flows of my personal life. Monday and Tuesday. And that is very repetitive in my personal life. Monday, I drive to work at 7 a.m. in the morning. I do my work. At 7 p.m. in the evening, I drive home. I unlock my front door. It's dark in the house. My hand reaches around the corner. I find a switch that's in a set of 5 switches. I turn it on without having to think about it, and I almost hit it perfectly every single time without looking at it. Light goes on, door closes, I'm happy, sit down, watch TV. Tuesday, different life flow. I drive to work at 7 a.m. in the morning. At 6:30 p.m., I leave the office and go to soccer practice. Play around, that varies in time depending on how many players are there. Then I drive home around 8:30 p.m. On my way home, I'm realizing, man, I really could drink a cool German beer. So I'm stopping at the supermarket, pick up a 6-pack of bags, drive to my front door. It's now 9:15. I'm unlocking the door. My hand reaches around. Now, what do you think would happen if the set of 5 switches now is 16 inches further away? First, I probably would take a double take at my house number. Am I at the right house? Which is obviously stupid because I drove up to it. I should know it's my house, you know. The second, I probably would think I'm in some form of matrix or something just happened that is crazy. Yet, in application design, almost every single application violates those inconsistency rules of letting the user establish this pattern of memory where they find the same actions. From screen to screen, you know, they vary or they switch order, you know. Those are tiny things, you think, but they completely screw up the user's minds. It doesn't match their mental model. That's why those things are important, and that's why consistency layer is really, really important in real life as well as in the applications. It's actually a fun exercise if you think about the other way around, bringing actually application qualities in real life. Envision you're walking in the morning to your front door and want to leave, and the door is frozen for 2 minutes. Or dematerializes in a blink of an eye all of a sudden. Or your car has a blue screen, windscreen, you know, and stuff like that. So, engaging. Applications, in order to be meaningful and rich, need to be very engaging, friendly, and approachable. Just like in real life, you know, when there's things that we feel are really friendly and approachable. You know, someone is nice to you. The grandmother gave you a hug with open arms and smiled, you know. The same grandmother, when she stares at you with squinted eyes and has her arms crossed in front of her body, you know, do you want to get a hug from her? I don't think so. So we think you should build some engaging and friendly application interfaces. Here's an example of what they could look like, you know, bigger spacing, legibility, larger fonts, you know, rounded corners, friendly colors. Those things all matter for the users. You know, it lets them build a relationship with your application, which creates loyalty, which is extremely powerful. You know, why do you think all those Apple users really like their apples? I'm one myself. I have an iPhone, and it has its flaws, but I love it. Tailored. One of the most important things. Tailoring the application towards your user's needs or towards the specific user demographic. Extremely important, and I will talk about that a little bit later in this presentation. Twitter is an example for a very well-tailored application. If 90% of your users do only 10 tasks in the application, why do you offer 90 other features in the application? Why don't you just focus more? Why don't you tailor the application and make it a more robust, rewarding solution for the specific user group you're supporting? Powerful. You very often hear salespeople talk about, we have this extremely powerful application. And then when you ask them, well, what does that mean? They rattle down features and claim that this makes a difference in the world of the people that have to work with it or play with it. And it's not true. You know, features do not make a powerful application. All the other qualities that we have described on top of here, they will form automatically a powerful solution. You don't really need to chase powerful. The power will come when you just follow some design principles and understand your users. Which brings me to user experiences, rich user experiences. If you do not understand your users, you will not be able to have a successful application that will last. If you do not understand your users, you can't build an application that fits their needs perfectly, that fits their mental model. So if you don't know that, you have to do user research. And ideally, you do it before you start developing. There's numerous articles from Gartner and Forrester and all the other analysts out there that have proven that every dollar you spend up front on user research and design will save you $100 in the life cycle of the product. That is a lot of money. So do user research. You will understand the patterns that they follow. You know, you will discover things that you didn't envision. You know, if you don't talk to them, you will never. You know, maybe you get some through bug tracking, maybe because people are complaining on your blogs or on your forums, you know. But really, they don't know how to do it better either, because they're not the experts either, you know. So they're just reporting like what they're frustrated with, but they don't offer solutions usually. Another challenging hurdle to overcome with users is generation X, Y, and Z. So on the left side, that's clearly X. I fall in that category. In the center, there's on the right side is Y. And Z is in just leaving elementary school or something like that, or early high school or junior high. I don't know what's called in this country. But so there is a generational shift going on all the time. And why this matters is because for the generation X, when we grew up, technology just started saturating private lives on every level. So when we went to school, you know, we had like calculators, more digital calculators. We had microwaves, we had a VCR at home, and all kinds of fun things, but it clearly didn't have completely saturated our daily life. Generation Y's life is completely saturated with technology, you know, which makes their attention span probably a quarter of yours because they have to deal with all that, you know, and if they don't get instant gratification from the technologies that they're using, then there's a disconnect. And so if you need to build an application that supports both, that makes it very difficult. It increases the challenge. So if you can tailor down to a specific demographic, it makes your design job or development job easier. Even more difficult is to predict what the next generation will do. And so you have to gradually evolve with your products, maybe even offer a light version of products, you know, depending on which demographic you need to support. Here's what I call the iPhone dilemma. it's not really the iPhone that's the dilemma, but the iPhone is synonymous for products that are superior in their usability, simplicity, intuitiveness. It's stuff that people love because it is almost fun using it. Those things create ripples across multiple industries. I cannot tell you how many of my clients from completely unrelated industries tell me, I want my interface to be like the iPhone. And it has nothing to do with it. Completely different demographic in mind. Yet, those things matter to the users. They matter because in their personal life, they use something that is simple and intuitive. When they go to work and they don't find that same in their productivity software, they're going to be really pissed. And so you got to, find ways to keep up with that. And the pressure on these things is mounting. The more successful products there are, the more you need to support these things, simple and intuitive things. Experience. What is an experience? An experience is usually something that is not just one isolated item. It's usually something that builds a story. You have a great experience when you take a road trip with your wife or husband, and you enjoy that you're having a convertible, and you marvel about the restaurants along the way, and the people in that state were really helpful. That makes a great experience. You don't ever hear anyone saying that the ride sucked and people were really unfriendly, but I had this really great burger. And that's not what an experience is. So experience is everything from start to end. So in the context of your application, it starts with the delivery. How do I get your application? Do I download it? Do I buy it in an e-commerce shop? That matters to the user. It's the first experience touch point in that story. If you have an iPhone, when you opened that box, that felt really nice. It had the right weighting, it had the right sturdiness. So packaging is important. If someone cuts their hands when they open a box that is shrink wrapped with this hard, sturdy plastics that they're using nowadays, and it's really annoying, and you need those heavy duty scissors to even cut into them and stuff like that. So that matters. It's a touch point in the experience. Installation process. If something goes wrong, it reflects badly on you right away. And even if it's a problem of the OS, your application can be completely robust, the installation process could be well thought through, and then there's damn other application that the user had installed. But it reflects on you, so it matters. Then the user interface, it's its own can of worms. There's like a ton of things that you need to consider within the user interface. Helping your user to get along with your product. That doesn't mean you reference them to go and look at a manual. You want to really help them in context. If there's a workflow that is challenging, you want them to understand what their options are, so you could offer some contextual help right there. Don't let them alone. Guide them. Support them. Support them. Don't support them by sending them to a forum. We are showcasing in a second an application that is for nurses in an emergency room department. It's a super high stress environment. Do you really think the nurse will sit down and go to a forum and try to find a solution for something that's broken in her application? I don't think so. Upgrade path, equally important. If you evolve your product, you want to make sure, it is flawless, seamless, and it works really nicely and well. And then there's et cetera, because there's actually easily 20, 30 more of those bullet points, that are experience touch points in the entire story, Obviously, the UI and the product in itself needs to work well. So, what to do first? We learned we need to understand the users, so that's a good point to start. Then you need to clearly understand your competition. You know, we look at that all the time. Why do you need to understand your competition? It's not so much to look at like, ooh, what feature do they have? What do I need to offer? It's a mindset of where you want to be with your product. Do you want a piece of the pie? Then you can have a great living being a follower and offering niche solutions. But if you want the pie, you have to innovate. You have to be ahead of your competition. You have to consistently innovate. Once you're done innovating one cycle, you got to keep going. Understand your technology options. If you absolutely must, you can choose the technology before you start designing. A better way of doing would be to let the user experience drive the technology decisions. In that case, you need to understand the technology options that are at hand that will support the rich user experience. Understand yourself. That sounds weird. It's pretty simple, though. Establishing a visual design language for a product allows us to give you an identity. It will create what marketing people call brand attributes within your application. We can make your application look fast, slow, reliable, mature, simple. Those attributes can be established through simple visual cues. So you need to know for yourself, how do you want to be perceived? If you do an application for the financial sector, you probably want to be look a little bit trustworthy, you know, and not like a slot machine, you know. If you want people to trade with your application, you know, it needs to portray some things like that. So understand who you want to be, who you need to be in order to support the user base that you want to support. How to do it? Clearly, ideation first. We have now all the data points, right? We know the users, we understand the competition, we know our technology options, and we also understand our desired brand attributes. Validate. Very important. If you come up with concept, you should always validate them. It will save you a lot of headache and money down the road. And now that I believe we are promised to receive Sketchflow in a couple of weeks, we will be able to do ad hoc prototyping really, really fast. And validation processes will be a lot shorter and will not cost a lot of money anymore. So I encourage you to validate. It will truly make a difference. And only if it's just to inform the design that was just established to make sure that when it gets delivered, that is robust right out of the box. Then, once you have the user experience established that you want to build, choose the technology. And the good thing is, and you maybe have seen that here coming to MIX, next generation technologies allow for great flexibility when it comes to building those rich user experiences. So, enough of the talk. Let's show you some stuff. So what we are going to show you is two case studies that we did for some of our clients. And they're on the complete opposite side of the spectrum when it comes to the user demographic. One of them is, as I mentioned earlier, for emergency rooms in hospitals. Super high stress environment, nurses and doctors use that application. The other one is for the die-hard NASCAR fan, racing car fan. People that go to races, people that identify themselves with their drivers, they brag when their driver won and things like that. So I hope you can tell already by what I told you earlier that they clearly have a different view of the world, just those two demographics. How they probably approach life, how they approach work, what their work is. One of them uses maybe an application at work, but not for work. The other one relies on it to make decisions that maybe save lives. So that makes really, really clear decision points for a meaningful, rich user experience. So what I got to do now is actually, want to start with the Ganassi one?
Sure.
Okay. Got to switch over and start a demo. And Jeff actually will demo this. Can you guys can see it, yeah.
So this is a Windows Vista sidebar gadget. If you were at the show-off event last night, you may have seen this. I'll pull it off to the side here. So the company came to us and they wanted something that displayed information for the different racing series that they were involved in. And we took a look at all the requirements they had. We spoke with their people internally and started looking at what we could provide to give race fans something interesting. And this is what we came up with. Right now it's in its docked state, even though I undocked it from the side. But you can see that this is kind of like a toy. Most applications are not this graphic, or they're not this tactile. But for this particular audience, this was perfectly acceptable. So they wanted something that would sit on the desktop and be just fun to have there. So here we're looking at the Nextel Cup, which has now changed, but it's a racing series, and we see some basic information. Since this was for our client, which is a racing team, we focused on their drivers, but we allowed the aspects of the other drivers who are not on the racing team be surfaced as well. So if you look down here, we have a Ganassi tab, and we have a top 5 tab. So even though we're showing the Ganassi team's racers, we can switch over here to top 5 and actually see who it is that won and where some other people came in. And you can tell that we had a noise there taking place. So the things that Peter was talking about with tactile attributes can also be supported with sound. And right now we're looking at the standings from the last race, but here we can also look at the results. And you can hear more sounds that are going on. And you're really getting a sense that as you're clicking these things, you're doing something. Kind of like the example with the elevators opening.
So in order to resemble the real life there, we went out and actually recorded audio sounds from clicking car doors, hydraulic movements, and things like that.
And up here is a switcher control, which is basically letting you change from the different racing series within the racing world. So this could have easily been a combo box or a drop-down box or some other typical type of control that comes just out of the box. So here we decided to make something fun. So you spin the wheel and you're switching the series. And we also have different things that happen on mouse over. And so and then there's a few different ways to get to the larger component of this. If I click on the logo there, we get to the big guy. And it's very much of what the other one was, but explores more information. So here we see the results from the last race. We see a nice picture and a top story. Down at the bottom, we have the next upcoming race and a countdown timer to when that's going to start. And over here, too, we have a calendar that we can open up and see when the next race is and how, where it's at, what time it's on, and so forth. And I won't go into everything that's within this, but you can see that it does have a very tactile feel to it.
Oh. Hello? Hello? I think Jeff died.
Hello? Can you hear me? There we go. So one other thing here, too, is if we go to the gallery, we're taking something that you're kind of seeing a lot with the Apple's cover flow. But it gives a nice, quick way to view through the images of the last race.
So if you look at the tactile qualities of this thing, the body of the application, the chrome, the wrapper, whatever you want to call it, was actually modeled in 3D in order to more truly resemble, how real reflections would work on a car body, And we did a lot of studies around that in order to get the right mixture between what a NASCAR car might look like, and in order to really get as close as possible to that sensation that NASCAR fans have when they sit there for 5 hours and watch 20 cars drive in a circle, and they obviously like fast, they obviously like shiny, and they like smoke effects. That's why we actually did this particle effect here on top with the smoke. It's those little things that matter to those people, and it's engaging, and encourages to play with it.
Let's see. So the next thing is a surface application, and since we don't have a surface here, I'm going to show it to you on the emulator.
I think I need to change the resolution.
Okay. So these both were very fun applications to work on. A lot of what we do is more business type of applications, but occasionally we get something that is just highly graphic and just much more interesting.
So unfortunately, since the equipment here isn't equipped to handle like a surface emulator, you see a couple of line art going through. I think it's still clear enough to see the power. Okay, so anyway,
let's get that going.
So as I mentioned for this project to start with, it's a high-stress environment, and nurses need to consistently collaborate with doctors. And so how that works today is they go into the nurse's room, and the doctors go in there as well, and then they have paper printouts of patients that just came in, printouts of like the nurses that work at different floors in the hospital, in order to make sure who is in the ER right now, who needs immediate support, who needs to be shoved out of the ER onto the floors. And that takes hours, that takes multiple hours a day just to do that collaboration.
And this here represents a dashboard that could give the people in the emergency department a high-level look at what's taking place. And I won't walk through the scenarios that we provided for this too deeply, but essentially here we have some things taking place. We have 7 inbound patients, 5 are waiting. Currently we have 20 in process, and you see other information. Some are being admitted, but this really gives them a quick glance overview of what's taking place, and we can drill in deeper and start to do things with inbound patients and so forth.
Yeah, and where that would be actually applied, this portion would probably be on a 50 or 60-inch plasma TV that is actually hanging on the wall, because it really, this portion of it actually just needs to provide that high-level overview of like what is going on when the nurses just walk by. And then the other portions may be more like on a collaborative environment, like the surface sitting as a tabletop.
Yeah, this particular dashboard isn't very approachable from more than one direction, but we felt that as a dashboard, and if it did have a secondary monitor up high, that this would be okay, at least as a starting point. And there's various things you can do in here, but I'll go quickly into just one of the more interesting, or a couple of the more interesting things. So the surface table itself has these corners that get you back to the main launcher surface. And we knew we needed some kind of main menu, so we decided to work with those corners and made a corner menu here. Now this one is not, we decided not to use all 4 corners because we felt that just having 2 corners was enough to satisfy anybody coming up to the table from any direction. And you can click on something here and it starts to bring things out. And we never had to go much further than this, but the idea too was that you could spin these wheels at any level and start to get additional items that don't just fit there on the screen.
So before you move on,
sure.
This is an interesting one because that's basically a technical requirement. So the technology was determined, and that's something that happens very often probably in your own world. You have to adhere to a technology restriction. And when we started exploring the surface, we kept on accident evoking this corner menu that Microsoft had put into it. And so in order to overcome this, we decided instead of yelling at Microsoft, let's just embrace the corner menu and build on top of it. And that virtually eliminated that accidental starting of that corner menu.
And so here I'll go into one other module that we'd created for this, and it's the floor status. Bring this up. Since I don't have a touch screen here, I'm going to need to
pin it down.
Yeah, I haven't done this in a while, though, so bear with me. Let's see. There we go.
Oh.
Nope. Well, let's just keep it there. So the idea here was that, and there is a story behind how you get to this particular module, but there's something taking place. There's too many patients that need to be admitted to the hospital, and the nurse and a doctor or the administrator are trying to find a floor that they can bring these patients to. And so we thought that we'd create this particular switcher to show the different floors of the hospital and get some high-level information about what beds are available, what beds are taken, and compare that with lists of nurses that are available for that floor.
Yes, and so the attempt here is, and this is a prototype that was showcased at the Life and Sciences conference, I think, of Microsoft in the fall. And the future idea of this is actually to have a truly holistic three-dimensional view of the hospital, because that's really how the nurses and doctors think about their hospital. They know which floor has which unit. They know who is working on which floor. All they need is the information, but when they submit a patient, they don't think, I got to go on the list, I need to sort the column, I need to kind of bring it over, and no, they think, I need to send someone to second floor and see if there's an empty bed. And so we're trying to map that mental model by providing this holistic view of the hospital in the future, where they can isolate the floor, look at it, and see which beds are empty with real-time status of like which beds are truly empty and which are full. And then in an instant, they basically can actually submit the patients. They will be able to drag and drop actually patients that are on their mobile devices right from their mobile device into the beds, and then they will, the people that are responsible for those beds on those floors will get the notification, and they will pick up the patients from the ER, and it saves those nurses hours and hours of work a day. Okay?
Okay, that's all we have here for this particular computer.
Okay.
Was that the end of your...
I think that was it on this one, yeah.
Okay.
So I hope you see the difference of like how different different user groups are working and how different you need to support them. And obviously technology is a big part in that as well. You know, that one is a multi-touch screen environment. The other one is just a toy, basically, you know. Nevertheless, still very meaningful for this very isolated group of users. So
now I'm going to walk you through a real-world application that we created a demo for MIX here. And we thought about different problems out there, different types of things that need a new design to it, and we came up with a ticket buying application. So the idea was to design and build a better ticket buying experience. There's a couple different ways that people are currently doing that out there, and one is through a search. So here the person enters the number of tickets they're looking for, a particular price, and they give you a couple of options down here, but not too many. And then you go ahead and click Find Tickets. And when you do that, it presents you with some search results, but just one result for however many tickets you'd like. So if you want to go back and you don't really like what that selection was, you can go back to this screen, change some of your input parameters, and then search again. They're not giving the user a lot of choices here. They're, let's say that what the application feels is the best available is over on the right-hand side here. Well, let's say the person's deaf in their left ear, and they would prefer to be in a seat on this side, which maybe costs the same, but fits their needs a little better. So there's a lot of things that I think are missing in this type of solution. Another one that you see a lot of out there is where they have a list of the tickets available, some prices there, and they show the sections, and then they have a map here that has the sections as well. But here we're also, I should say this is a kind of a better approach, I think. It gives you a little more flexibility. But still, you have to look at the section here, see where it exists on the map, and connect a few things with your mind. So we felt that we had some opportunities to improve upon this. So the first, as I've mentioned, is to give the users options. Who says the best available fits the user's preference? We'd like the person to be able to explore the venue to see what is it that fits the person's needs, and to visualize the seating experience. Also, you should be able to change any of your input parameters at any point in time and see how the results change. So here I'll go over to our application. And it's very simple. Like I said, we put this together for MIX. It's not too flashy or anything like that. There's not a lot of parameters surfaced here. But you see that your basic inputs are a price range, number of seats. You could imagine having additional options here, such as a handicap, or I'm sure there's a number of things that could be surfaced that would be usable for people. But we decided to just stick with some of the basic things. And down here you see your typical kind of top-level view of what the venue looks like. And so we thought that we could have a price range. So you know that you're willing to spend a little bit of money depending on what kind of seat you'd like to get. So here, let's say $10. I'm more than willing to spend more than $10 on a seat for this particular thing. And you can start dialing this up. And as you do, certain sections become disabled. So it's telling you that I can no longer, those seats are falling outside of the price range that I'm providing. And similarly, in the top end, you can say, I'd really rather not spend $150. And as you start bringing this down, you can start seeing how that's affected. And then once you kind of input some of these things, you can hover and look at what the section is, the price range of that section, and the number there for the price range is getting cut off a little bit. We had some font issues. Number of seats available within that section. So if you have your mind on a particular place to sit and there are not that many seats available, you need to act quickly. So we really felt that we could provide a lot of high-level information at this point, at this view. Now, let me open these back up a little bit for the sake of the demo. Once you see that there's a section that you like, what you should be able to do is drill in. And again, this is not finished, and we have one section here that has some seats in it, but you can imagine having the entire stadium in 3D here with seats. Also, colors haven't been tweaked and things like that, so please bear with us. The seats up here at the top are disabled, and these down here are the ones that are enabled, that are available to people. So you can imagine, too, that some of the seats within this section would have a different visual quality to it to show that they've been taken. So the three states we felt that you have are available, already taken, and outside of your price range. Now, also, if you hover over this, you can see what that seat costs, get a number for that seat and the section. And let's see. At any point in time, you can change your price range. So we could say, you know what, now that I'm in here, what happens as I start to change some of these things?
So one visual indicator that's missing here is actually the seats that are already sold. So the tickets that are not available through this service, but for that we would have had to hook up some live data, and we just didn't have enough time in the moment to do that.
And Peter mentions, too, at the top of his slide deck that consistency is very important. So we have a very similar type of tooltip that comes up at this stage as well. So it's natural for the user to kind of poke around and explore. So now, again, we can drill into a seat just like we did to the section and view the stadium from that particular seat. And you can purchase the seat here if you'd like, or we had some ideas, too, of how to go from this even further, which we weren't able to develop in time. But now that we're in a seat that fulfills our inputs here, we thought that it'd be nice to be able to kind of hop around the stadium from seat to seat that is within those filters. So again, we have not done this yet, but you can imagine kind of going to the left and right and jumping to available seats and kind of compare what the seat experience would be for each of these different places. And so this needs a lot of refinements, but you can see that it has a lot of fun aspects to it, and also provides a lot of useful information. So building this, the high-level architecture is essentially a couple of controls. The first is a user control that we called Stadium 2D. And the second is Stadium 3D, which is a custom control that I'll talk about in just a moment. And these two things kind of sit on top of each other. And when you drill into one of the sections of Stadium 2D, it does a nice fade to the 3D. Stadium 2D started out in Illustrator, and we went and brought that into Expression Design, tweaked a few things, and then exported XAML for Blend. Stadium 3D started in Autodesk 3D Studio Max. And here we created the geometry for the stadium. We created lights, cameras, and we're able to explore a little bit about what the camera movement could be like. We exported from 3D Studio Max to XAML. And there's a great product for doing this called Polytransfer Max by a company named Okino. I've been using Max for a long time now, and I searched around for some kind of exporter, came across this one, and it really did a nice job. So goals for exporting Stadium 3D. We did not want to have to alter the exported XAML at all. So the good things that this would provide us is we could make updates to the 3D scene at any time. And this would also allow us to change out models. So you can imagine having many different venues in this product. And you could easily just kind of swap out XAML and have a new stadium working with the entire solution. So I'll go over to Max here for a moment. So here's an example of what we had in 3D Studio Max. You know, everything's full 3D. And under the Utilities tab here, we have our exporter. And I'm just going to show a couple of options that they provide here and why it was kind of nice. So within the properties here, they give you the ability to output a few different types of things. One is a control template, and this is what we made use of. So instead of just getting a window or a page out of an exporter, it provided a control template that you could then apply to some kind of control. And it's quick and easy like that. We'll go over to Blend. And so we've created this XAML file here. If we look at it, it's quite large, but you'll see that it's a resource dictionary with a control template inside. And the target type for that template is a control. If we click and go into it, it did a pretty nice job of representing what we had in Max here in Blend. And the way you make use of this now that it's a control template is quite easy. You could just go in here and put down a control. I'm not used to a resolution this small, but we'll get there. And then edit the control template and apply that as a resource. So this is how we started. But we went further from there. Instead of just using a control, we decided to create our own control that subclassed control. And we added properties. We got at the camera. We got at different objects and things like that to make it work. So if we look over here at we created, like I said, Stadium 3D, which is subclassed from control. And it's pretty easy to get at the objects and cameras like you would in a 2D object within a template, and that's with the get template child. So this says, let's look inside of our template for something named cam main, and set our local variable here equal to it. So it's that easy to get at the camera. We could then adjust its transformation over time and have fun with it.
If you like code.
If you like code, which I go back and forth between. So the 3D camera animation, WPF's camera has a position, it has a look direction, has an up direction. And this is a good starting point, but we ran into a lot of difficulties trying to animate it. There seem to be two approaches. The first is to move the camera by its position, and when you want to look at some place, calculate a new look direction. Well, we found that animating the position and the look direction at the same time became quite hard. It's hard to control, hard to get the results we were looking for. Also, the up direction doesn't tend to want to stay up. So as you're animating the look direction, the camera could kind of tilt sideways and not quite give us what we were looking for. Animating with transformations is another valid way to approach it. So we could move the camera with a transformation, we could rotate it. However, when it comes to looking at an array of seats in front of you to kind of point to where you want to go, you have to calculate an angle from the way you're currently looking and also an axis of rotation. So this also became another very kind of challenging way to approach it. So we took a look at the camera in 3D Studio Max again. And if you look at this one here, you'll notice that there's a camera and there's this thing down here, which is a target. So as you move the target around, the look direction is automatically calculated, and the camera tends to stay up, facing upward, no matter what you do. So as I go around here, we're seeing that the camera is not slowly tilting to the side. And that really provides a lot of creativity when it comes to trying to animate the camera. It gives you a lot of control. So that is exactly what we were looking to have. We want a target where as you move the target around, the look direction would follow. And then as those two things changed, the up direction would try to just do the right thing and try to point up. So we basically data bound a couple of things for the camera, the look direction and the up direction, to a target, a point 3D in 3D space. And we basically made use of data binding with converters to make this happen. So as you move the target point, the converter is given a point 3D for the target and the look direction. And as it moves around, it's basically automatically moving to follow that. Also, the up direction is bound in the same kind of way, and it always stays perpendicular to that look direction and tends to try to always want to point up. And this really provided us with something to animate quite easily. That's about all I have on that. I can open it up to questions.
Yeah, we have about 15 minutes left, and so we can answer some questions if you guys have some questions.
I can go much more in depth with the solution as well, but I'm not too sure if anybody's interested.
This feels like an echo of VRML, and I'm wondering if you guys can reflect on why VRML didn't take off and why you think this will.
It's a good question. I don't think it's a matter of the technology, but more of the solution involved. You know, designing a solution that fits the needs of the users is probably first and foremost, and if you do that, then people will use it and adopt it.
I think in this specific scenario, one of the biggest challenges of any type of three-dimensional arena setup, they change all the time how the layout of the venue is, to accommodate concerts. And so you would have to create a system that allow for those app dates on the fly without having the service that offers the ticketing have to deal with that, And so there will have to be a lot of exploration, and we are hoping that we can, together with Microsoft and actually the ticketing company that's behind this concept, have like a real prototype established in the future that really takes that into account.
Are you saying VRML wasn't rich enough as far as interacting within the application goes, and this has bells and whistles that the other technology didn't? Am I understanding you correctly?
I'm personally I'm the designer. I'm not that familiar with VRML.
Yeah, I'm not that familiar with it either. 3D was not, well, let's see. Basically, WPF provides you with a lot of options for making things rich and interesting. 3D is one of those. You could completely make some application like this not using 3D. We just chose that it was a good challenge for us to try to attack and come up with something useful.
No,
Yeah, go ahead.
maybe I misunderstood in my conversation with someone else earlier, but it's my understanding that you can't use 3D in Silverlight in the browser. And is that correct, or does it have to be only as a Windows only as a WPF application?
I'm not all that familiar with Silverlight 3 beta, but I believe there's some 2.5D type of solution involved
So which
there.
means this would not be delivered in the browser?
No, this would not.
No.
This is just a demo desktop application.
Okay, and then the particles with the smoke,
Mm-hmm.
did that come through as a XAML exported feature, or how did you get the smoke happening after the fact? I was in your demo yesterday, and I thought, well, they just exported an animation, and that was it. But it looks like it's a full-on object that you're manipulating.
There's two things going on. We created the animation in 3D, but we also rendered it as a set of PNG images. So when the user clicks the forward or back arrow, it's playing back some images. So it's not really rendering anything in real time at that point. So the smoke effect comes up, was composited on top of the tire within Adobe After Effects. But also going on at the same time was the name that's kind of wrapped around the tire. So what we did was we brought a cylinder into WPF and mapped our text block right onto it so that we could control that with code quite easily and only have one set of images that we could play back and forth. And there are little sync issues involved with it, but overall we were happy with the quality we were able to get out of it. When did they come in? They were baked right into the PNG images. So we rendered the tire out as a full sequence of images, and then we rendered this particle system as another set of images, brought those into Adobe After Effects, and worked at the way that those two things blended together, faded things on and off, and so forth to get the look we're after.
At one point you just also got to, pick your battles. How much do you want to invest in something? I mean, this was a very low budget project, for something like a fun toy thing. And so if we can do something interesting with a very low cost solution, then you got to pick your battles eventually. But I wouldn't be surprised if there are some form of converter engines out there, that you can use to bring it all together.
Yeah, at first I thought about trying to do it with, bringing a model into WPF and animating it, but we just knew that we wouldn't get the look we were after. There's certain qualities of light that you get when you actually render it with a renderer, texture, and quite a few things.
One quick question. I mean, this was a hypothetical project demo, a prototype. Mm-hmm. Now, I would be interested how the real world would impact your approach for prototyping. We had this question just now about would it run in Silverlight. So if you were to build this thing as a web application, mm-hmm. would you still start out with WPF for the prototyping, or would you choose like Silverlight from the beginning?
Well, I think we would. I mean, the reason why we chose this is because we had a project with a vendor that provides online ticketing. And their shortcoming was their underlying technology. We had envisioned a lot more interactivity to selecting stadium seats. At that point, we didn't quite envision how immersive that can be, but the underlying technology didn't allow for that, and it was a very old-fashioned PHP, HTML kind of system in place, So we would probably go back and really look at the benefits that the users get out of something. How far do you want to push that? How immersive can you really make that it is meaningful? Because there's so many things that matter, like just because you're sitting in the seat and looking at an empty basketball court, do you really get that perception of depth? So there would have to be a lot more understanding and looking at how far can we push that, or are we going too far? And that's where validation becomes extremely important. Users might not adopt to that, So it's one thing to innovate, but you shouldn't just throw it over the fence and hope it will make it, I think you still need to do the steps that are necessary to make it a meaningful product, So it could very well be that the end solution stops at the seat level, or goes even further. You know, you can go onto the court, or photosynth provides data from basketball games, and you can see players, and you get a better depth perception. You know.
Yeah, I think you said it right, which is this is a hypothetical application,
Yep.
and we kind of did it for the fun of it, for at least some point of it, part of it. But knowing what kinds of restrictions you have in your technology at some point in the design process becomes important. As Peter said at the beginning, it's nice to kind of design and then choose your technology based on the design that you come up with. And that's what we try to do, but there's always a reality check at some point where you say, okay, how are we going to build this? How are our clients going to build this? And we take a look at other options that you would have. I could see making use of more photography than 3D models in something like that.
That's actually a very good point. The economical check always will happen, and we showcase a lot of these things out of the view of the designers, how they approach this challenge in order to create something meaningful. But clearly, there's other constraints, business constraints, that always need to be taken into account.
We have a hard time not doing an awesome job in every project. We have projects that have a certain budget, and as designers, we just want to do the right thing. We want to deliver the best experience, and sometimes the budget just does not support that.
You mentioned towards the beginning that once you've established an identity for the application and you've established traits that you want for it, such as you want it to appear to be fast or slow or secure, those types of things. You mentioned that there are multitudes of ways using visual indicators to establish that with the application. Is there a library of resources or patterns that you as a designer use that you refer to look up different types of visual indicators that are associated with those different types of traits? Or do you have to come up with them over and over again?
That's an interesting question. There's certainly a lot of books written about color theory and things like that. There's a lot of libraries around interaction patterns. But there's this gray area in between about those emotional qualities or those analog qualities I've talked about that come a lot also with experience. And then it's also varying depending on where you are in the world. We have mapped the world into different color spaces. In our Western hemisphere, the color red is a signal color that often can be used to alert someone. But in the Eastern hemisphere, the color red means luck. So there is a lot to consider, and there is a lot of books out there that teach the theory. The challenge is the applying it, and make meaning with it, where to stop, how far to go. Now, when it comes to like appearance of something, like fast, reliable, and things like that, that is really something. I could talk a lot about that, but it's a very interesting topic. For example, reliability and maturity. Historically. A lot of software companies come from the realm of IBM and Microsoft. The early UIs that you saw that came right after green screens, they were gray and gray, and businesses out there started adopting those applications and UIs. So it created this interesting false sense of security around the color space of gray, and so that is now something that you can associate with that. Simplicity has to do a lot with visual clarity, so less is more. So simplicity, it's like white space, it's more spacing, What you can do if you run in these challenges, try to find something in the real world that you encounter where you get that sense. When does it feel simple? When you look at a sheet of paper that's empty, nothing looks complex, right? If you look at Lego bricks, if you have too many colors, things start looking complex, and so there is just like real qualities you can draw out of everyday's life that will help you apply those, Readability is huge in applications, opening up the sizing of font, makes everything feel more approachable. When you have a straight corner, everything feels more organized. You know, when you have a rounded corner, everything feels more playful. So this is not rocket science. That's really, you know, I think we all feel that because, like, we all like when we have a round pebble in our hand. It feels right, you know. We all feel cold when we have a metal casing. So the cold feeling you can inject into an application if that's what you need in the application, you know. So it's actually a lot of I would call it common sense, but a lot of people have never made that bridge between the real world in a meaningful way, you know.
We're also at an interesting time where user experiences are still being defined. These patterns are still being defined, and you know, we're finding that we're using patterns that have been that exist, but we're also trying to push the boundaries and come up with new things that haven't been defined yet.
My question relates to your use of Autodesk. Was that something that you already had in your design lab, or did you have to teach yourself that?
Sorry, I didn't understand.
Autodesk 3D Studio Max. That was something
Something that my designers don't have. Yeah.
Personally, I've been using that application since back in college.
Yeah, that's a weird one. That I did the same thing when I was in college. I started using it, and the number one quality you get out of using that tool is you can much better predict, like, casting of shadows, how reflections work on objects. You know, it's just when you play with that a little bit, and it doesn't have to be a lot, you get a much better understanding, and you can clearly see if someone models a surface that has that understanding versus someone that doesn't. You know, it just feels off, and you know, because again, you can relate that directly to the real world. You know, I can't see you because those damn spots are in my eyes, you know, and you can apply that to everything, you know.
Thank you.
I'm curious about your hospital application, and I'm wondering what was the process like in getting the hospital to adopt this pilot project. I'm assuming it's already in a hospital.
Yes, so this was a three-way relationship between Microsoft and a company called MedHost Inc. And they have already saturated many hospitals in North America, and you can actually pull it up here. They have saturated many hospitals with some of their earlier applications that weren't quite as good or pushing it as far from an innovation perspective. And so we worked with them very closely. They had hired a bunch of nurses that used to be in emergency rooms as their knowledge experts. And so we worked very closely with them together to get that sense of the emergency that's really happening. The next stage of this would be to actually put them into the environments and validate. And I'll give you another example where validation, and I forgot earlier, I said something about it, was like crucial. We designed an application for the NFL, tablet PC, handheld PC, that is going to be used in the future in a couple of seasons by coaches and players on the sideline to review still images of plays that had just happened. It's a touchscreen UI. It's a ragged tablet PC because people drop it all the time. It rains, it snows, there's sunshine, there's stadium light. It needs to work at night, during daylight. The one thing that we underestimated and we only discovered through validation was there are certain ratios. There are scientific studies on what the ratios of touchscreen buttons and things like that need to be, and the ratios between the buttons. Unless you have ever shaken the hand of an NFL player, you don't know what that means. Their hands are 3 times bigger than yours. So the conventional scientific research on touchscreen UIs did not account for NFL players. So we only discovered that because we were standing next to them on the sidelines, and they were trying to use that thing, you know. And we realized, okay, well, we got to go back and increase all the sizes of all the touchscreen buttons, you know. And so, but you only find this through validation, you know. If we would have just pushed that product out and wouldn't have done that validation, the NFL would have canceled the project, you know, because it wouldn't be adopted.
So like the iPhone, they probably wouldn't be thrilled with the iPhone, right, as an input device.
Yeah, the iPhone is an interesting one because like people always try to compare it to a BlackBerry and things like that. You know, I have a lot of the Generation X people like me saying, yeah, but it doesn't give me the this and that and blah, 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 blah. You know, I don't think that was the aspiration of the iPhone. And Apple is a great company because they truly have a design-centric approach to all their product design. You know, they look at what they want to do. They look at the demographic they want to support. I don't know the exact setup or parameters of this specific process, but I could bet that their demographic was really someone that wants to make a phone call and that wants to receive a voicemail, you know, and maybe you offer a platform that allows for small applications instead of trying to have the aspiration of competing with a BlackBerry. You know, now, by doing that, they actually created something completely else, a new business model, because now everyone jumped on this bandwagon of building applications, and now they almost are becoming a BlackBerry automatically. Did that answer your question? Sorry.
It did.
Well, I think that's it for time. Thank you all very much.
But nobody's after us. If you have more questions, that's
Sure.
fine.